ship took a direct hit, veered to the right, and took out our number 2 ship. Both exploded. About that time, our waist gunner advised us that number 6 had failed out. And tailed in Charlie, the last plane in the formation, just took bombs from the lead ship in the high flight. The lead ship in the high flight bombed, tailed in Charlie. All of this was going on. We lost number 4 engine, feathered it, and number 3 was running away at 3,400 RPMs. He gave me orders that I should try to feather number 3. When it came down to 2,400, I stopped feathering. It took 3 attempts at this procedure before the engine finally settled down to hold the 2,400 RPMs. Now it was time to check the ship and the crew. Everybody was okay, but next to my right leg was a hole 12 inches long and 3 inches high with insulation all over my right leg, plus a piece of 88 flak wedged by my left foot just inches away. I picked it up and laid it on the quadrant. Pete just shook his head and said, "Dave, you'll make it through your tour, or you really keep your cool." I'll never forget the confidence that this remark gave to me. We floated home by ourselves as we had only 2 planes left out of the starting 7. The BBC radio advised us that American heavies bombed that target with little resistance and no losses. That was hard for us to swallow after our baptism of fire. Our crew was honored to have been introduced into combat with such a person as Pete Misseri. And I used his chute all the rest of my tour. He had a seat back. That meant that I had to weigh down if necessary. Most of my 35 missions were never easy. But that one on Friday the 13th is deeply embedded in my memory. I was later checked out as first pilot, and on my 13th mission with a brand new airplane, got to land on Piers, that's an island off the Yugoslavian coast, because of fuel shortage. Later it was determined that the automatic lean wasn't working on the 2 inboard engines. We came into Piers on 3 engines only, landed safely, and stopped just 50 feet short of the end of the runway. The next morning we took off after our fuel was flown in and we had survived 1 more mission. Yes, we slept in that barn upstairs with over 300 Yugoslavians on the floor. That was our experience too, but sometime in February, I think, is when we visited this. I may say that in reading this, it would appear that all of those losses were from the 727, but it wasn't. The official records show that 3 planes from the 727 went down on that day. We lost 8 planes were either lost over target or landed in Piers on that day. So the 3 planes that the squadron lost, the 727 squadron lost, was Lieutenant Homer Brewer's crew, Lieutenant William Going's crew, and Lieutenant James Moyer's crew. Now, the 724th squadron lost 1 crew, 727 lost 2 crews, 726 lost 1 crew. The 727 did take major loss on that mission, but it must have been a flight of planes from different squadrons that would compose that flight instead of all being from the 727. Well, I guess that's. I think Vic says that, you know, in reading it, you would think that maybe the explosion of the collision of the number 1 with number 2 was instant, but he says that wasn't the case, that he remembers flying some distance after the collision, after the trouble started. He's not also always so sure of what did cause the disaster to happen, but he knew they were in trouble. And but they did fly sometime after the initial point of contact. and their plane eventually exploded, but it wasn't an immediate explosion.
Our crew is quite intertwined, it seems like, with a lot of happenings. For example, Bob Anderson mentioned that his co-pilot, the day of August the 23rd, Marcus Thorpe, was ill and could not participate in that mission. He later became our pilot. He was our third pilot. And of course, Pete Becerra, as you... fourth, okay. Our fourth pilot. And also, Pete Becerra, as you probably all well know, he and Bob Carstensen were the ones that were the initial founders of our alumni group. At one time, we had, I think, about 2,000 people on our mailing list. And some of the earlier reunions would have several hundred people without any phone calls. They would just send out the announcements and people would sign up. So we're down to about, I think about 500 actual members of the bomb group still on our mailing list, and we have another couple hundred from widows and family members and friends of the 451st and so forth. So you might say that we've lost about, I guess about 75% of our flyers and ground crew personnel over the, I guess it would be a 32-year period of our alumni group. So our next speaker is a special friend, and Tom, if you would come forward.